Prior to the Great Discovery, the U.S. had no internationally recognized rights to Antarctica. The 7 nations, those with territories bordering the frozen continent, had long-standing claims, though they'd never enforced them. They'd never constructed military bases or embassies. They'd never stuck a flag in the ground. The 7 nations had less of a claim to Antarctica than the U.S. did to the moon. And like the moon, Antarctica seemed little more than a novelty, until Zanadium changed all that. In just a matter of weeks, the U.S. government took the whole place over. They ordered all miners to pack up and leave, confiscated everyone's mineral hauls, no matter where the mines or the hauls were from, quarantined the sick, which pretty much only meant the giant hamster habitat, and undercut private industry by outlawing sales of prospecting equipment to the public. What's more, they forbade any other nation from setting foot on Antarctica until further notice. And when the 7 nations complained, the U.S. government publicly extended the Monroe Doctrine, the stay out of South American affairs doctrine, to Antarctica. That wasn't a change in policy, U.S. leadership explained, but rather a new interpretation of existing policies. The Monroe Doctrine, interpreted in terms of manifest destiny. Needless to say, the cold rush ended when the U.S. government stepped in, but my recovery would continue for well over a year. Discovering the world's most powerful radioactive element is a good thing if you're trying to destroy a giant rock hurtling at you from across the cosmos. It's not such a good thing when you're a miner who's been vaporizing this new radioactive element with a neutron laser drill for a few years. To this day, incidentally, Zanadium remains the most dangerous substance known to man, unless you count Grover. For the first couple of months, I stayed in Antarctica, isolated in my room, bedridden. Dr. War watched after everyone during this time, and by watching after them, I mean he watched everyone die. I don't remember much about what Dr. War and I talked about, not because it wasn't important, but because I was almost dead. I do remember some things. I remember laughing, though I don't recall it what, and I remember lots of times where I knew what Dr. War was going to say before he said it, and sometimes without him having to say it. But I don't remember what any of those things were. The only fragments of conversation I remember are from the day I got the transfer letter from the government saying that they wanted me back in Chicago at another military hospital for treatment and observation. I remember trying to write them back to say, no, not without my Burkina doctor. I say trying to write because I'd lost my writing hand, and wrist, and arm. Radiation poisoning had damaged the cells in the arm I used to write with beyond repair, and so all the letters I wrote came out like chicken scratch. What's more, the effort of writing left me so exhausted that Dr. Wara forbade me from trying anymore. What is it you are trying to write here? Dr. Wara asked, squinting at the page of illegible scribbling, rotating it in his hands. He thought he was holding it upside down. He wasn't. Never mind, I said. Just give it back. I'll try again. No, you need your strength and rest. You look ready to collapse. I'm lying down, I said. Yes, and even still I worry. With a groan, I pulled my spiral notebook from under my covers and flipped to the first clean page. Not easy with one hand. Give me my pen, I commanded. But instead, Dr. Wara took my notebook away too. God damn it, I said. Give me that back this instant, or I swear to God. Yes, you swear. You swear what? I swear to God that I'll heave off this bed and torpedo you. Yes, go ahead. Do that. Put up your Duke. Duke, singular. I'm not sure if he meant that as a joke or just got the pronunciation wrong. I do know it pissed me off, and to demonstrate my anger, I pouted and tried to cross my arms. Again, tried. There, good, Dr. Wara said. You relax. Stop trying so hard. Dexterity will come. Your brain needs time to adjust. Before you know it, you will feel as though always you had favored that hand. Until then, please, allow me to write for you. There, on the edge of my bed, Dr. Wara sat, spiral notebook on his lap, pen poised and ready to write. Okay, I said. Give me back the last letter and I'll read it aloud. You can write it down. He gave me the letter back, but even I couldn't read a word that I'd written, so instead I dictated the following letter, from memory. Dear United States Government, for the past 4 months, on and off, I have been in the care of Dr. Moussa Wara, a Burkina national with French citizenship, without whom I wouldn't be alive today. Now I have received word that you wish to move me to a hospital in the States and that you've agreed to pick up all the expenses. Thank you. However, I must request that my regular doctor, Dr. Moussa Wara, accompany me and be granted full U.S. citizenship. While I'm sure you have many capable and specially trained doctors on your staff, I doubt any of them will have the patience and understanding to deal with me. My suggestion is that you offer Dr. Wara a position within your government's medical unit, where I'm sure he will make an outstanding contribution. Unlike the rest of us, Dr. Wara didn't go to Antarctica seeking riches. He went so he could practice medicine without French persecution. You see, in France, the medical establishment views doctors from Burkina Faso and other African nations to be of lower merit than their own doctors. If you don't allow Dr. Wara to come to the United States, where this sort of racism isn't an issue, I fear France will become his only option. Please join me in preventing this terrible travesty of justice, and in return, I will happily sign whatever legal papers are required to grant you full access to my body for x-rays, tissue samples, or whatever other experiments you deem necessary. Thanks again, sincerely, Clay Ingram. After faithfully rendering my words to paper, Dr. Wara handed the notebook back so I could read what he'd written and sign under where he'd printed my name. Signatures don't have to be legible. As I read, he seemed to contemplate the letter. At last, he said, "It is not true, you know, that I come to Antarctica to escape persecution." "I know," I said, not looking up, still reading. "Fatima and I, we went to Paris many times. It is not as you say that they are so racist. That is not why I—" "Yes," I said, "I know. Wherever life is valued least, that's where I'll find you. Except Africa, 'cause too many bad memories." Dr. Warren seemed to consider this some more. Then he said, "Do all Americans find it so easy to lie to their government?" And I looked up saying, "Do you want to practice medicine in the States or not? Because I don't need to—" "No, no," Dr. Warren said, sort of shrugging, sort of smiling. "I would, actually. Very much so, yes. In New York, preferably." I started to nod like to say, "Yeah, I thought so," when I did a mental double take. "Hold up, wait," I squinted. "Why New York?" Dr. Warren said, "Can you think of any place else in this so-called first world where life carries less value?" Dr. Warren had never heard of Detroit. Upon my return to the States, I received a hero's welcome. Flowers from the First Lady, primetime documentaries, the Congressional Medal of Honor, the works. Rayner got the same treatment. They gave the Congressional Medal of Honor for an outstanding deed or act of service to the security, prosperity, and national interest of the United States of America. It's the highest award bestowed by the U.S. government. Whoever would have thought that two boys, two troublemakers from Tinsel Park, would receive the Congressional Medal of Honor? To celebrate, Tinsel Park changed the name of the main street from Justimere Road to Keenan Ingram Parkway. Then the government threw a parade down it. All the big names were there. Important people and celebrities. Dick Clark hosted the television coverage on MSNBC. The whole nation watched as the U.S. Marines marched alongside the Tinsel Park Volunteer Fire Department and Cub Scout Troop 459. Overhead, U.S. Air Force flew formations while people looked up and pointed. The locals all came out to watch from crowded sidewalks, where everyone held signs and spread banners, waved flags, and basked in confetti shot from cannons. Some people watched from open windows, others from balconies or fire escapes. A good deal watched from their rooftops or the rooftops of local bars. Me? I watched from 30 miles away, peering up through the semi-transparent bubble surrounding my hospital bed to a TV mounted in the corner, as an arm waved from a black limousine and the words "Clay Ingram waving" appeared at the bottom of the screen. I knew that wasn't my arm for two reasons. One, because I wasn't in Tinsel Park. Two, because I no longer had that arm. Years later at a bar, this guy would hear me bemoaning this point and approach me out of nowhere, swearing up and down that television works like a mirror, so that when you see someone waving their left arm, it's really their right, and vice versa. I removed my mechanical arm and showed this idiot my ID, but it didn't matter. He was that set in his beliefs, wearing a pro-abortion shirt with a picture of Jesus on it. That's how I still remember it. Must have been within the last 10 years. In any case, my homecoming parade celebrated me in absentia. From Antarctica, I'd gone straight to the government hospital in Chicago and stayed there, most of the time under strict quarantine, for the next 13 months or so. Doctors came in like those guys at the end of E.T., all dressed in white, airproof radiation suits, handling me with plastic gloves. I asked them if they'd ever gotten my letter about Dr. Warren, about letting him stay in the United States, but no one knew anything. Later, I'd find out that officials had acted under strict government orders to incinerate everything transferred out of our base camp since our discovery. They'd burned letters, clothes, personal effects, everything except the people. Unless you consider dead Burkinabés to be people, which it seemed nobody did. In the endless commemorative ceremonies and specials to follow, no one ever mentioned the Burkinabés any more than to call us a multicultural group of miners. No one ever mentioned their names or the names of their families back in Burkina Faso. They could have been anyone from anywhere in the world at any ratio. No one ever mentioned the specific tribes or cities or areas from which they came. Hadn't they died in an outstanding deed or act of service to the security, prosperity, and national interest of the United States of America? Didn't they deserve some medals? A multicultural group of miners? Hell, for all that told anybody, they could all have been Americans. What the government did mention was their plan. Their new plan, which sounded a whole lot like their old plan. Land on Grover, drill hole, insert bomb, fly away, kaboom, no more Grover. Only now the government would do it themselves. No help from private industry. Private industry didn't trust the government anyway, what with all those broken alchemist contracts. And so, after a couple months, television specials showed our former ant colony crawling with government ants. My American doctors wouldn't shut up about them. Whenever some American doctor would poke me or prod me or stab me with a needle or run some Geiger counter thing over my body, they'd preface it with, "You know, Clay, those new government mining suits, they're safe now, thanks to us running tests just like these." And I'd say, "Yeah? And how does that make you feel about your suits, huh? Since you've been wearing them long before running any tests." The government had assured my parents I was going to pull through, but that's not the same as them talking to me themselves, or seeing me. My mother actually insisted on seeing me the day I got back. And so what did the government tell her? "But Mrs. Ingram, you can see him on TV. Clay's going to be in a parade." That's the only reason I watched the stupid parade in the first place, because I knew they'd be watching too. It's like this thing Captain Mastarian told me once about sailors and their wives, how they sometimes pick a star, then both gaze up at it every night at a predetermined time, taking comfort in the fact that their loved ones, somewhere, were seeing the same thing. Captain Mastarian had done this with his wife. In my case, I was seeing the same thing as my parents, not my wife. And the star was Dick Clark. The good thing about all the television specials and so forth was that I never had to explain to my parents what had happened. Plenty of celebrity voiceovers were willing to explain every detail. There were CGI graphics to illustrate how radiation disrupts cells and corrupts cell genes. Then the celebrity voiceovers kicked in with, "This can lead to a person's arm falling apart." It was convenient, actually, because when the government doctors finally did let me call home, I could focus on more important things, like where was Callie? I remember the phone rang a few times, and then my dad picked up and, "Hello? Hey, Dad, it's me. How you doing? Clay? Hey, where are you, boy? Wait, hold on. And then with his hand partway over the mouthpiece, I heard, Hun, hey, it's Clay. Yeah, Clay. No, stop it. Go in there. Grab the other phone." And a second later, I heard my mom pick up in the kitchen. The kitchen line always had more static. That's how I could tell. "Honey, is that you? Hi, Mom. Clay, how are you?" "Fine, Mom. How are you feeling? Your arm, does it hurt bad? Is there something we could send you?" "No, I'm fine, Mom, really." "But you lost your arm." "Yeah, Mom, I know. What are you going to send me for that?" "Clay," Dad said, "is it true what they're saying?" "What? Who's saying?" "Oh, stop with that nonsense, George." "Clay, honey, now tell me. Are you holding up all right? Do you have those phantom pains?" "Phantom pains? No phantom pains. No pains at all," I said. "Though I do feel like it's still there sometimes. The arm, I mean. Is that what you—" I heard my mom sigh. No, that's a good thing," I said. "It's good. Doesn't mean I'll have pain later on. It means it'll be easier to fit me with a prosthetic." "That's true," Dad said, like he'd become an expert on prosthetics while I was away. "It's like, if I feel like my arm is still there, it'll be easier to coordinate I didn't want to say hook. You know, so," Dad said, "I assume you've been watching the news." And I heard Mom whisper, "Stop it now. I'm serious. He doesn't need more worry." I could tell she'd walked from the kitchen into the living room, stretching the phone cord to its limit, and was smacking Dad with her little hands. "Hey, stop it, Dad said off phone. What's wrong with you? Jesus." And then back to me again. "Hey, boy, so tell me, in the months before you left Antarctica, you must have seen something." I hadn't the slightest idea what he was talking about. "It was dark," I said. "I couldn't see anything." "Do you have TV there, Clay?" "Yeah, of course, a big TV, 20 inches. Why?" "So you've seen what's going on in Australia," Dad said. "Australia? No, what's—" "Oh, for Christ's sake, George, quit grilling him about the war." That was Mom, immediately biting her tongue. Silence. "The war?" I asked. "What war? What are you talking about?" I'll never know what happened on the other end of that line, but the next thing out of my dad's mouth was, no, nothing, never mind. It's nothing, Clay." Mom must have threatened to kill him. With her eyes. "No, it was definitely something," I said. Hesitation rang through loud and clear. And then, as though they'd agreed upon it, Dad said, "It's just rumors, son. Right now, at least. But people have been talking. Journalists, lots of them are claiming to have proof." "Proof?" I asked. "Proof? Proof of what? What are you talking about?" Dad sighed. "A 7-nation army, Clay, gathering on Australian shores." "You really haven't heard anything about Australia?" I hadn't. Didn't make sense. Not to me, anyway. A war? No. But if it was true, I knew one thing for certain. If I wanted to find Kelly, she'd be in Australia already.